Naemo is from Ethiopia, and she has a question.
My question is...
They'll bring up the volume.
How can you give young people who have faced severe tragedies the strength to heal again?
How can you give young people who have faced tragedies the strength to heal once again? And I would like to ask Rabbi Rosen, would you explore this question briefly with us and deeply?
It's a tough one. I think the best I can do is join it together with responding to Josh's question. We all know the golden rule. In one way or another, it appears in all our traditions. In the Hebrew Bible, it's in the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 18, love your neighbor as yourself. We all know it. But it begs a question, why do you need the last part of that phrase? Love your neighbor. Be good, compassionate, kind to other people. Why as yourself? It obviously indicates, as commentators have pointed out in the past, that you need to love yourself. In fact, that you need to love yourself in order to be able to really love others. What does that mean? It doesn't mean being egotistical, that you're self-centered, because if that's the case, then you don't really love yourself. You're just slave to yourself. That's not the same thing. It means, and this is also part of that famous discussion within an ancient text, being able to sense the divine image, the divine quality in yourself, that you are of inestimable worth, even when you fail and fall down, and even when you have been terribly victimized and maltreated, that you are still of inestimable worth, that your dignity is inherent, inalienable. It's really important to appreciate how valuable you are in yourself. And it's sometimes a very difficult thing to do, maybe impossible thing to do sometimes when you go through terrible experiences. But the more you can remind yourself of how blessed you are to be able to be alive, to be able to live in this world, and the more you can appreciate that sense of the divine within you, the more you will be able to overcome those terrible experiences you may have been through. And the more you can really love yourself in a true sense of appreciating it, the more you will be able to overcome adversity, the more easily you will be able to pick yourself up, and the more truly you will be able to love and celebrate others and the world in which you live.
Oh, Rabbi, thank you so much. Sister Rajaprana, would you share with us your perspective on this question?
I would say that from our perspective, that we would tell that whoever is suffering, that the deepest core of you within us is infinite strength, infinite compassion, and infinite light. And no matter what anybody does to us, that strength and wisdom and compassion within us is something so infinite and strong that nothing can ever take that away from us. They can cut us into pieces, but they can never take away our infinite nature, which is infinite strength, purity, and perfection. So what we have to guard against ourselves is that when we have received cruelty, that we remember that whoever inflicts that upon us is they are themselves suffering. To inhabit a mind that is cruel, they have to suffer much more than us. Also, whatever we suffer ourselves, we begin to understand that others, therefore, are suffering as well. It opens up our hearts to understand that suffering is a universal human happening. It happens to all of us. And I would also remind, I'm not going to be outdone by the rabbi here. Never.
You couldn't be.
My mother, who is one of the wisest people I know, but who suffered a terrible childhood. No child should ever have to go through that. And so I asked her in her 20s, Mom, why aren't you bitter? She said, I chose not to be. I was just making myself unhappy. So we can choose to have happiness and to think of others first.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, Ben, you posed a really wonderful question yesterday, and I know you're on the panel, but I'd love you to bring that question forth, if that's okay.
Might be quite all right with me. I wanted to ask some of our many luminaries on stage up here, how do you maintain a heart of love in the face of suffering and destruction? How do you maintain that internally?
How do you maintain a loving heart in the face of such destruction? I think that we would just ask the Archbishop and His Holiness to concisely reflect on this question. How do you maintain a heart of love, how do you maintain loving kindness when you're facing just utter destruction, as both of these wonderful people have?
I think it is one of the toughest questions that you have to face when you posit a good and a loving God. But I think we are affected so by all kinds of things around us. I've had the quite incredible privilege of being involved with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. And many times devastated by the revelations that some of the perpetrators made. Which made you say, how could anyone sink so low? Like, we gave him drugged coffee, we shot him in the head, and we burnt his body. And it takes 7-8 hours for a human body to burn. And so whilst the body is burning here, we're having a barbecue here and drinking beer. And you're aware that it says about each one of us that we have an incredible capacity for evil. And we really ought to keep saying when we see someone perform a ghastly deed, indeed, yes, there, but for the grace of God, go I. But what was so incredibly exhilarating was to sit there and listen to people who had suffered grievously. People who ought to have been consumed by bitterness and anger and a lust for revenge. And we would sit there and hear people speak words of amazing generosity. When people would, when you thought they were going to explode, have a deep compassion for that other. And you realized, hey, yeah, we do have this awful capacity for evil, but we also have an extraordinary capacity for good. That, I mean, we, quite amazingly, all of us have this gift being created. You know, we are created for goodness. I mean, that we are created for transcendence. That we were created almost as the ultimate paradox. The finite created for the infinite. You and I and all of us are those who are made for God. That only God can ultimately satisfy us. Mm-hmm. And you walk around and you say, hey, I'm a God carrier. And that's a God carrier. We're all God carriers.
Thank you. Good.
Let me just tell these people about Your Holiness. Just one little thing. Yeah. The reason all of us come really is to follow up on what I've said. I mean, we see here an incarnation of goodness. I mean, in all of us, our hearts just leap. And we feel so warm seeing you. He said, "What? How can you, 50 years into exile, still maintain this bubbling joyousness?" And I've said, actually, he's quite mischievous too. I mean, and I've sometimes said to him, the cameras are on us. Try to behave like a holy man.
I didn't hear it. Yeah, okay. Great. Gotcha. Thank you.
Such a good laugh at this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it seems to see that all religions, different sort of names, due to different philosophy, but ultimately, everyone in deep inside some kind of goodness. So I think that's important to realize, and useful in many cases. Someone completely sort of lost hope, and recognize that, remember that, can sustain hope. Completely sort of demoralized, again remember that, hopeful. Then others who create some negative thing, that looks 100% negative, and lost temper, these things, anger, hatred, these things. And such case also is remember the other also that ultimately they are goodness. Then that negative feeling will, I think, reduce, cool down. So that's, I think, Buddhists call Buddha nature, Buddha seed. I think that's all, and those are the theistic religious tradition. After all, everything created by God. So there is some kind of, I don't know, what proper sort of word, I don't know. Oh, some kind of essence, or divine essence, right? It's everywhere. So, one time, one of my Muslim Muslim friend, or rather Muslim, I think, priest, told me, as a true Muslim, you should love as much as love towards entire creature. All creatures, as much you are loved to God. I think there's a different word, different way of presentation, but the same meaning, infinite altruism, which Buddhists say. Same. Isn't it? So different philosophy, different kasota. What's it? Costume or robes. But I think same essence. This is, I truly believe. But of course, in the philosophical field, if you go, philosophical field, or a lot of argument, I have to argue with you. But really, important is the essence. That really helpful in our day-to-day life. It's a philosophical, different interpretation, different sort of explanation. It's supposed to support that essence. Essential teaching, isn't it? Like that. My boss.
Sister Joan, I want to put you on the spot a little bit, if that's okay. But you are always on the spot.
On this
Yeah.
same question?
Same question,
Okay.
good essence.
How do you maintain a heart of love in the face of so much destruction? I think you have to start by remembering that what we are about, people like us, is not the capitalist enterprise.
Yes.
We do not do what we do in order to succeed. If you are here hoping that what you do will succeed, you hope in vain. We do what we do because we must. We do what we do because spiritual integrity demands it. We do, as the Sufis say, what the snowflake answered the owl. The owl said, "Snowflake, how many snowflakes does it take to break a branch?" And the snowflake said, "I don't have the remotest notion. I don't have a clue." And the owl said, "Then why do you keep on falling?" He said, "Because one does what one can." That's why we do it.
You know, we have here people who work incredibly hard. Maybe they would say no, but I think we can say yes. And Josh has a question. Josh? Josh.
Connor.
Well,
Connor?
you know, Josh, your question was, how do you keep yourself healthy? But Connor, you can ask it if you want. You know, with all of the assignments that these men and women take on, one of you has a question that is really essential of how we... Okay, go for it, Connor, from Seattle.
Hello? There we go. There is, in the world we live in today, we all know too well the kind of violence, destruction that spirituality can breed, whether it's the genocide in Darfur or it's the events that happened on September 11th. And I would like to know how you feel spirituality can be used as a catalyst for, not for destruction and for pain and for hatred, but for compassion and love.
Connor, thank you so much. I wonder if we could open with some comments by you, Rabbi.
First of all, I would say that if belief systems are used for violent purposes, then they are in fact a betrayal of spirituality. So it's not spirituality in itself that is the problem. The problems are manifold, not least of all the relationship between religion and identity, because religion seeks to give meaning to our understanding of whom we are. It's therefore bound up with the components of human identity from family, through community, through nation, through people, up to the cosmos. And when any of these elements feel that they are under siege or threatened or unwelcome or alienated, then they tend both either to pull in on themselves and very often to demonize the other. And religion, because it seeks to give that meaning to those components of identity, often becomes part of the problem rather than part of the solution. However, I have incredible experience of how religion is used constructively all over the world and how spirituality is a positive force. In fact, because of my work, I get the impression that it's a burgeoning industry of exponential growth, and I don't understand how everybody doesn't realize it. And now, I started this in South Africa. Founded the Interfaith Forum, a council of Christians, Muslims, and Jews. Then the government kicked me out, so I suppose I was doing something of value. And then in Ireland, also, during periods of troubles, in fact, everywhere I leave tends to improve after I've gone. But I don't want to leave Israel because of the bonds and in Jerusalem that I live. But there are over 70 interfaith organizations in the Holy Land. There are over 300 organizations in which there is cooperation between Muslims, Christians, and Jews. Amazing activity. We've now even founded a council of the religious institutions of the Holy Land in which the chief rabbin of Israel, the Muslim religious authority, the Waqf and the Sharia courts, and all the patriarchs and all the bishops are together in one body because they want to help bring peace and to support it. Nobody knows about that. So your question really begs another question for me, which is the bane of my life. How is it that anything that's negative gets immediate press coverage and is on the TV, and all the positive things don't get out there? Please. Please, Bishop Desmond. Thank you for that. All I know is that I was saying what you believe and you feel because these days have convinced you of how much goodness there is and how much similarity different communities have and how much we can do together. And we've got to find the way to galvanize this power and this potential and bring the message and healing to the world.
Thank you, Rabbi. Uriah, I know this is a question that also touches you.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, well, how do you use spirituality to avert violence and to engender compassion in a world that is fueled, as Connor has said, by sectarian violence?
Well, I guess you try to bring religions together to find their similarities and differences, and then you go off of the positives and try to fix the negatives. So then all the negativity that gets out in the media you try to overpower it with the positive, and then you, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so I want to ask Rob, who has this huge congregation.
When somebody wrongs you, when they commit an injustice, when they do evil, whether it's something petty or whether it's the oppression of millions of people, it's as if they have handed you this injustice or evil. And so you can hand it back. That's called revenge. That's when you take the wrong, the evil, the injustice, the hurt, and the betrayal, and you simply respond in kind. Mm-hmm. There is, next to revenge, another option, which is not to hand back the pain, which means that you're going to have to bear that pain. And when you choose not to respond with revenge or retaliation, but you choose to respond with forgiveness, and you choose to take it and bear that pain, it is going to be heavy, but it is going to lead to your freedom. It is going to feel like a death, but it is going to lead to a resurrection. It's going to feel like a Friday, but a Sunday is going to come. And I think what we see with Archbishop Tutu and with His Holiness is when people choose not to hand it back, but to bear it, it will always lead to suffering. And you will unavoidably become a better person on the other side. And I think that's what we respond to, that is what changes the world. When somebody chooses not to hand it back.
Thank you so much. Otieno, you had a question about religious pluralism. Could you ask that, please? This has been a big subject for all of us here on the panel in our lives. So,
there is a strong fear towards religious pluralism and its effects. How can interfaith dialogue bring compassion without the fear of losing one's own religious identity?
So this is a really kind of a raw question. Otieno asks, how can interfaith dialogue nourish compassion without the fear of one losing one's religious identity? So, Dr. Mattson, would you step into that question, please?
Well, I'd like to just refer to a verse of the Quran that addresses this question in particular. The Quran says God created religious pluralism for a reason. It would have been in His power, complete power, to make us one faith community. But He chose to create us in these communities so that we could strive as in a race towards goodness. So interfaith engagement and dialogue is like the Olympics of the spirit. When we strive, looking at the other person in a spirit of holy envy, of wanting to be better in that way. I want to have the forgiveness of Archbishop Tutu. I want my community to embrace that. I want my community to have the patience and the compassion of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. This is what will make each of us better without losing anything. So this is the true Olympics here today.
Thank you.
That's lovely. That's a great answer. That's a beautiful answer.
JASMIT Singh.
I think as a Sikh, given that religious identity is a very core part of who we are as individuals, the turban, the whole identity part of it plays into what do we stand for in this world? I think each one of us wrestles with that question. And as a Sikh, you make a commitment to God that you're going to stand for social justice. And that's what it represents to me as an individual. Now, when I look at the whole idea of having a conversation between different faiths, I think we tend to think of that as a very serious conversation. And when I'm sitting out here and I see Archbishop and His Holiness Dalai Lama being very playful, being naughty, if that's an appropriate word to be using for these gentlemen. Yet that playfulness actually ties to the core of our essence. If we think about it, the 6 scriptures start, the first word is ekonkar, and that is God is one. And I think that's the core thing, that, we are all children of the same God. It is universal. So when we recognize that feeling that, we are all, whether we believe in a formalized God or an infinite being or a spiritual sense that pervades humanity or cosmos, does not matter. I think so long as we recognize that that's who we are as individuals, I think we can benefit from that. And I think if we start from there, that religious dialogue or understanding each other's faith can only help us become better individuals in life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Desmond. Your Holiness, this issue about religious identity and how it has fueled sectarian violence, and also the importance of religious identity and traditions within cultures. We see, in terms of our aspiration to have Tibet be protected, its traditions protected. I would be so grateful to hear, your view on how one can nourish, through interfaith dialogue, fundamental compassion, and at the same time respect the religious identities that are assembled in that dialogue.
Firstly, I always look within the teaching of Buddha. The Buddha, one teacher, but he taught different contradictory philosophies to his own disciples, followers. So sometimes I jokingly used to telling people, this is certainly not out of confusion of Buddha's own mind. Certainly not. Nor Buddha deliberately create confusion among his followers. No. Then the question, why he taught contradictory philosophy? The answer is, as you say, the theistic religious sort of the concept. As there's a concept, Buddha, full compassion, compassionate, full enlightened. So, among his followers, there are different mental dispositions. Therefore, it is necessary to teach different philosophy. But these concepts itself contradictory. But to individual person, these different philosophies suit. One philosophy, one concept may not suit this person. Therefore, Buddha deliberately create different philosophy according suitability of certain mental dispositions. Now, this what we learned. Yes, there are millions of people who have different mental disposition. Therefore, at different time, different location, these different teachings come according the concerns of the people. Suitable teaching or religion. So then when we look Buddha's sort of different, sort of contradictory philosophy, we admire Buddha. It helpful to increase admiration of Buddha, so compassionate, so sort of wise. It's not imposing sort of his sort of one philosophy, but there's a different philosophy. So similarly, when we saw in different traditions, in the philosophical field, yes, big differences, fundamental differences. Doesn't matter. What is the real essence of the teaching? It's the same. Effect, according to different people, it's the same effect. Therefore, there's a sufficient reason to respect, to appreciate. That's usually my thinking. So more variety of tradition, the better to satisfy variety of people. Do you agree?
Your Holiness, a question that I think many of us are interested in is the role of science in relation to religion and spirituality and its potential to resolve differences. The role of science in relation to spirituality and religion and its potential to resolve differences. What is His Holiness's view on this? I don't know.
I have thought it over and I do not know.
Yes,
As far as Buddhism is concerned, and particularly Sanskrit tradition, Pali tradition, Sanskrit tradition, the Sanskrit tradition, there is sort of strong sort of tradition, emphasis, investigation, experiment. And in order to carry investigation, it is necessary to have some kind of skeptical mind. So in that respect, the modern science also remain skeptical and carry investigation, then find the reality. And once that reality, through experiment, through investigation, really clear, then accept. So there is some similarity. But Buddhism in general, particularly the Sanskrit tradition. So Buddha, as he mentioned, my follower should not accept my teaching out of devotion, out of faith, but rather through investigation, through experiment. So therefore, many masters of the Nalanda tradition, they took this liberty and investigation. Buddha's own word. This word is acceptable because through reason can prove. This Buddha's sort of teaching cannot, because it comes contradictory with our investigation. This monk also took liberty to reject some of the Buddhist literatures regarding cosmology, cosmology like Mount Meru in the center, and the suns and moons go like that. These are some literature, Buddhist literature, such as Abhidhamma Koshakarika is mentioned like that. It's obviously contradictory with our Karada. We can see. And also the Abhidhamma Koshakarika is mentioned the size of the moon and the sun almost same. These are disgrace. Disgrace. So we must accept the reality. So we took the liberty to dismiss this concept. Meantime, I also telling, when I mention these things, please don't think me, don't believe it. Don't think me as a nihilist. Because my rejection, some of these holy books. Oh? Yes. So in any way, like God, Creator, these are beyond science, isn't it? And certain concept. Now, for example, Buddhist, according to Buddhism, like moksha or salvation, these things are beyond the scope of science up to now. Now, science further developed. Then, I think, end of this century, the 22nd century, the scientific view may be different, may change. So this is open.
Thank you, Your Holiness.
So therefore, I usually Buddhism divide three parts: Buddhist science, Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist religion. So regarding Buddhist religion, nothing to do with science. Buddhist concept, some extent. Buddhist science, yes, we must go with modern science. Marie.
I want to do a time check with the conference organizers. Is there someone?
Joan, it's there. 12 minutes.
Okay, I got a note that said stop at 11:30, so I'll listen to the monitor and not to the note, if that's okay. Naimo from, how do you say it? Naima. And I made a mistake. Naima is from Oromia, which is in the same relationship to Ethiopia as Tibet is to China. So she corrected me, and I want to correct myself publicly. Thank you.
My question is, do you feel as if all religious dominations have more of a universal responsibility to work together to build a more compassionate world?
Do all religious denominations have a responsibility to work together, to work together to build a more compassionate world? I'm going to ask Sister Joan if you would address this very concisely, and then Rabbi Rosen very concisely. Beginning with you, Sister Joan, if that's okay. Do all religious denominations have a responsibility to build a more compassionate world? Go for it.
I think it's obvious. Of course we do. We say we are created by one God. We say that we are all the human family. That makes us interdependent. That is the basis of compassion, because it is the basis of the morality of the world. No religion, to my knowledge, no religion ever has absented itself from that responsibility. Our only major question, as far as I'm concerned, is more of what you're doing here. Bring us together, hear the multiple hearts, and then leave without fearing any of us.
Yes. So, Rabbi and Uriah, I want to give you a little advance warning. I'd love for you to address this question as well, and also Ben, again, very concisely.
Well, I think other than the Catholic Catechism, I probably agree with everything Sister Joan says.
Good, David. Good beginning.
I would even go, with her permission, go further and say, not only is it obviously the obligation of every religion, but if a religion desists or any community withdraws itself from engagement with society, especially today when we face ecological and environment challenges of enormous magnitude, it is not worthy of the name of a religion or a faith.
Well, okay. Uriah.
Just one last very quick comment, because, you know, all right, I won't.
Thank you. We want to hear from the two young people. Uriah, quickly.
I think all religions have to take action, because if you don't, then who's going to be there to stop the media from showing all the negative images, like for different religions and just in general? So you need I think they are all obligated to take a stand, because many religions are about like love and peace and finding a way to show compassion towards others. So you need the religions to take a stand for what they believe in and not just sit around. So yeah, I do think they're obligated to.
Thank you, Uriah. And Ben, just one line.
Oh, I think that at the foundation of every major religion across the entire globe is the ideals of love and compassion. And so we need to take those values and put them into action, to take a step forward into the future and really think about how we're all going to reach out. It's time.
Well said.
I would like to thank our distinguished panelists and the Seeds of Compassion Youth Ambassadors. And I would like to invite His Holiness and Archbishop Tutu. If you have any concluding words, as so many young people are here, going to essence.
Yes. God looks down on us and sees especially young people. And having looked down on the world, God often weeps. Tibet, Burma, Zimbabwe, the Middle East, go on and on and on and on. And maybe sometimes God says, oh dear, whatever got into me to create that lot? And then God looks down on us and sees this incredible collection of especially young people, not exclusively, but especially young people who care. Because you came because you care. And God says, you know, I have no one except you. to help me make this a better world. Where there is more compassion, more caring, more gentleness, more laughter, more sharing. And God knows that, gee, aren't they neat? And a smile breaks over God's face, like the sun shining through the rain. And God says, yeah. They vindicated me. That's exactly why I created them, because of these fantastic human beings who care. You. Go for it.
Yeah.
For me, nothing except whether we accept religion or not, up to individual. Once we accept, be serious, sincere.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, I got it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Buki. Thank you.
My dear beloved Bishop, how I love you.
Picture of me with the big shooter here.
Yeah.
My dear brother, I love you. Thank you.
Thank
You
you
are
so
very
much.
good.
Thank you.
Very good.
Good man.
Where we walking off, you know?
See you tomorrow.